You are listening to the You Get to Decide podcast with your host, Allison Gallagher, and this is episode number 60. Welcome to the You Get to Decide podcast. This is your life and business coach and host, Allison Gallagher. I help all you high achievers out there feel content and confident so that you can feel happy now. Then you're just going to go out and create the life of your dreams faster. Through my journey, coaches have helped me completely transform my life, and now I get to help you do the same. Every week, we're going to talk tools, tips, and tricks to help you take consistent action based off the life you want. Because you really do get to decide your life. And I am here to remind you of that every week. So let's get started. Hello, everybody. I hope that you're having a fantastic week. Welcome back to the You Get to Decide podcast. And I want to start off by asking, when you think you've reached your limit in what you can handle in your life, what if you were truly actually only at 40% of what you can handle? I want to create some evidence with this podcast that you are much more capable than you think to hold more emotional challenges, create more resiliency. There's a lot more space for you to hold those things and to be those things than you might be thinking. And our brain wants us to preserve energy. And so it's not going to show us that we have the mental, physical, intellectual, emotional capacities, because our brain's job is to preserve energy. So it's never going to say, oh, look, there's another challenge. Let's take that on. Oh, look, that looks hard. Let's go do that. It's going to constantly show you what's hard. It's going to constantly show you it's not working. It's going to constantly show you you're incapable because it doesn't want you to try to exert energy for the most part. Okay? So I want to create a podcast episode that gives you, there's a shit ton of evidence out there that I believe as human beings we have infinite capacity. Now, when I say infinite capacity, we can either two things, right? Tragedy happens, trauma happens, or we get put into a situation where, like, within seconds, we have to have a capacity to do almost superhuman things, right? You hear about these things, people picking up cars to save a child or enduring terrible, traumatizing events to survive, right? And that comes over us immediately. And I'm just going to share a few of these in this podcast lightly. I'm not going to go into too much detail, or we build our capacity over time with purpose to become another version of ourselves, to become a version of ourselves that can hold more of a capacity. Like, that's how the people that, the statistic is if you overnight win a lot of money, the percentage lose the money quickly. They spend it all. They end up in jail. Like tragedy happens, right? Because they have not built the capacity to hold that much money, that much wealth, right? And so there's people that if you are born with nothing and you create millions or billions of dollars, like, they created the capacity to hold that much money, and over time they became different versions of themselves that expanded their capacity. Okay, same with going to the gym, physical pain. You have one child, and then you have two children, then 3 children, then 4 children. You're expanding your capacity to hold that many people, right? That need your attention. And it's probably harder for someone who had no kids with twins, right? You roll out and all of a sudden you have 2 babies versus 1. And then however many years later you have 2. And my husband is a twin. And I always think about the story, but he's a twin and he's the youngest of 5. And through his mother's whole pregnancy, did not know that there was twins, thought there was only a boy. And so the day he was born, 14 minutes later, came his twin sister. They had already had 3 children. So they went from 3 children to 5. They did not know that was happening. So it was literally within 14 minutes. They had 3 children, then they had 5. They had to build their capacity very quickly to juggle, to maintain, to take care of, to hold 5 children. Okay. But I want you to know, if you desire to build your capacity to create the business that you want to create, to overcome an addiction or a challenge, or to, one of the reasons why I have 1 child is because I didn't think I had the capacity to have 2 or more. And my goal is to make sure I am emotionally, I can manage my own mind to create a well-adjusted, happy child. And I didn't think I had the capacity to do that with more than 1. And I was afraid that I wouldn't be there emotionally for my 2 children. And I would, I don't know if it's fail as a parent or not be there emotionally for them and do something that would create trauma for them. And so because of my childhood and how it was very important for me to be emotionally available for my child, so that she always felt worthy, heard, important, that her needs matter, that if there is something happening as, a highly sensitive kid, that I can be present for her. And I was afraid I didn't have the capacity to do that for more than 1 child. Okay, because I have this underlying belief deep down that I am not capable, right? So for me, it's been building my capacity as an adult for all of my goals that I have. I'm a high achieving person. Okay. If you're listening, you probably are too. And I have to expand my capacity to hold that level of challenge, hold that level of success. That's why sometimes when a child gets handed a business, it crumbles because they didn't build the capacity to maintain the business. It was just handed to them. Maybe they didn't work for the company. A parent dies and all of a sudden they inherit this business. 2 things happen. They build their capacity really freaking fast, or they don't build their capacity and it crumbles. So basically, when I am using the term capacity, it's emotional capacity, mental, physical capacity, intellectual capacity, operational capacity, any type of challenge it's not about pushing yourself to dangerous extremes. No, that's not what this is about. Okay. And I hope to God that you never have to. But it's about realizing that you can handle way more than your brain is ever going to tell you in that moment. Right? At the gym, when you're pushing yourself at the gym or running or doing some type of exercise, your brain is going to tell you, okay, I'm tired. Right? Or if you decided to run 5 miles and you hit 5 miles and you have more in the tank, you've decided you're going to run 5 miles, your brain is like, okay, you're done. And then we listen to our brain and then we're done. Right? Our brain is going to quit on us way quicker than our body will. And that's what I want to offer you here. Okay? I love the idea of infinite capacity. Like I literally, I believe it to my core, and I'm around people that have created big capacity in their life, in the businesses that they've created, and how many children they now have, and how much they can hold in their life. Taking care of sick parents, running a 7-figure business, and having 3 children, right? And doing it, managing it all really well. Okay. They've created and built their capacity to hold that much in their life. Okay. So what I want to offer is whatever you're going through, you get to decide if you even want to believe that you have the capacity to take on more or to deal with what you're going through. But I believe if you're listening to this podcast, it's because you absolutely want to believe that you have the capacity. So the first thing that I want to offer, and there's so many stories out there about this. I mean, I'm thinking just by listening to my intro, you probably have thought of some, right? I think of David Goggins. He's the Navy SEAL. He wrote a book called Can't Hurt Me. He's actually written other books, but he lost 100 pounds in 3 months to join, to qualify for Navy SEAL training. I'm just going to tell you some of the things he's done, but his book is fascinating. And I mean, he had a really rough childhood in Brooklyn, but he went through Hell Week 3 times. He ran like 100-mile races on like 2 shattered legs or something ridiculous, right? And I'm not telling you to go out and do this to prove anything to yourself. I'm just telling you, this is a human being that has done extraordinary things. So I want you to compare yourself from a place of abundance, not your less than, just from a place of abundance that's like, oh, wow, I do have more capacity. I do have more in the tank. So how can I find it? Right? Very different conversation. I don't want you to compare yourself and say, I'll never be as good as him, or what does he have that I don't? No, I'm a human being just like him. My capacity is going to look different because I have no desire to go through Hell Week 3 times, but I want to build the business I want. And I also want to make sure I'm taking care of my family and start a nonprofit and hit my, health goals and whatever the goals are that you have the capacity to. So I just want to mention just a few other books that if you're interested, like one of my coaches is obsessed with this and she's read every single book about human beings and the things they've endured to help her really dig deep when she was going through some really hard things to believe that she had the capacity to overcome. I don't read these books, though I did read, Nike. I read Shoe Dog, which was incredible as an entrepreneur, and the amount of risk, his capacity for risk and resiliency and problem solving was amazing to me. And I also read David Goggins books, but I did not read these books, okay? And I did not watch these movies. Man's Search for Meaning by Viktor Frankl, and it's the Holocaust survivor's account of finding purpose and resilience. Unbroken by Laura Hillenbrand, and it's about Louis Zamperini, the Olympic athlete turned World War II soldier. And he was a POW. Okay. Then there is When Breath Becomes Air, a neurosurgeon facing terminal illness explores what makes life meaningful when time is limited. Then there's the Between a Rock and a Hard Place, which was made into a movie, 127 Hours. That was with James Franco. And I mean, he was stuck in a boulder. And what he had to do to endure and to survive. These are, and whether you read them or not, but these are examples that we have infinite capacity. And I just want to offer, what does that look like for you? It doesn't have to look like these things, but this is evidence that we have infinite capacity. Okay. And what I do want to share with you is, because if you're feeling stuck right now, just in life in general, okay, and maybe you're spinning your wheels and you're feeling disconnected from life, or maybe there's a time where you felt stuck, or you're afraid of feeling stuck. Okay, because I have felt stuck, believe me, so many times in my life I have felt stuck. But what I want to offer is hope to take more steps with faith, believing you have the capacity to figure it out, believing that you are in the right place and you are walking in the right direction, no matter how slow you are going. And it doesn't have to be, running 100 miles on 2 broken legs and, in 127 hours, he had to saw off his arm, right? It could be small steps to prove to yourself that you are building your capacity for whatever goals, whatever life you want, that you're capable of getting there. Okay? So I want to tell this story, and then I want to talk a little bit about what I do. The astronauts recently that were stuck in space, okay? And I love this because this is basically a modern story of infinite capacity. And so last year, it was June of last year, Suni Williams and Barry Wilmore, they were supposed to take an 8-day mission. And I don't know how much you know about this, but I'm just going to give you a little bit of a synopsis. They were supposed to go for 8 days, okay, to the International Space Station. And then helium leaks and propulsion issues, they couldn't return, okay? And they ended up staying in orbit for 286 consecutive days. So that's 9 times longer than they had planned. They got in this ship and said, we'll be back in 8 days. And then they were stranded. They were stuck. They were stuck for 286 consecutive days. Okay? Imagine being in that situation. Okay? So if you're stuck right now, this is what I want to offer to you. Okay? This is the capacity of resilience. Managing your mind. Managing your mind is everything in this. Okay? Because this is what happened. She performed 9 spacewalks, totaling 62 hours and 6 minutes, breaking the record for the longest cumulative spacewalk time by a woman. Okay? So she ended up breaking a record. They also broke the record for 286-day extension. Okay? But instead of panicking, they leaned into the situation, conducting 900 hours of experiments, handling spacewalk repairs, which was a result of physical, emotional, and operational capacity. Okay, zero gravity, strict routines, isolation, emergencies. They managed their mind and leaned in to the stuckness. And I'm going to believe that one of their thoughts was, how can we make the most out of this? Or this is exactly what was supposed to happen. What if this was, how is this happening for me instead of to me? Right? Those are the thoughts that create these types of results instead of spinning out, committing suicide, or who knows what else, right? You have no idea when you're coming back. Okay? And you were supposed to be gone for 8 days. And then beautiful things came out of it. They set records, 900 hours of experiments, right? Instead of being stranded, they chose to show up every day with purpose, in service, so that it wasn't wasted. Even if they felt stuck, they created something beautiful out of the stuckness. Imagine the capacity, okay? Adaptability, resilience. This is all an example of infinite human capacity in action. In action. Okay? And Now, for me, because I believe I have infinite capacity inside of me to create whatever life I want to create or to overcome any challenge, believe me, I don't walk around believing that 24 hours a day. There are days where I feel stuck, but the underlying belief is I have infinite capacity. So even when I feel stuck, I know it's for a purpose. I know that if I take small steps, that I'm moving in the right direction. And even the stuckness is serving me. There's something I need to learn that I haven't quite learned yet in the stuckness. And because I believe I have infinite capacity, and I believe this for my clients, right? So I have clients going through really hard things. Okay. I have clients going through compulsion and addictions and trauma that they're healing. I have clients that are starting businesses. I have clients that are trying to get through slow seasons. I have clients that are homeschooling a child going through all types of home renovations and showing up in their business. And right now they don't have any team members. Like I have clients going through real life things and they want to show up in their best self. They don't want to spin out and spiral and I can't do this, I give up, I am overwhelmed, and they want to and not show up in their life, right? I'm leading that call with the belief that they absolutely have infinite capacity to overcome anything that the brain can dream up. Okay? And because I believe that, how this shows up in my life and for anybody that, I'm on a call with my clients, okay, if they're not quite believing that, I am there to believe it. Instead of focusing on what we don't know, I look for data and answers, okay? Because it's not that you're not capable. That's not even a thought. So if it's not working, if something is not creating the result you want, let's look at the data of what you're doing versus what you're not doing. Let's analyze the data and let's go again doing it a little different. Same with me, okay? I believe I can create the business I want. I believe that I can get as many things done in a day that I want to get done. And if I didn't get it done, okay, if I didn't make my revenue goal this month, it has nothing to do with not being capable. It has nothing to do with not holding the capacity. Okay? Let's look at the data because I believe that I'm capable of figuring it out. Right? So you get curious on what you did, what you didn't do, and you go again with different information. I do this with my clients as well. Instead of letting setbacks mean I'm not capable, I look for the lessons that they bring. Okay? I believe I can handle any challenge, and so I don't get derailed by problems. I might get stuck. I might get briefly stuck. Okay? Fear, maybe a little bit of overwhelm, but my guiding voice is I'm capable. This is temporary. I believe in my infinite capacity, which means I am enough. And what I'm doing is enough. And I can figure anything out. I may not like having to figure it out. It might not be fun to figure it out, but I believe I can. And I believe my clients can, and I believe you can. I did a podcast episode, I don't know, a while back about why you should believe in yourself and why I believe in you or something. And that some of this probably is in that episode too. And I didn't always believe this. I believed it's always hard. I believed it's always harder for me, that I'll never have what I want. I was born to struggle. I was born to suffer. And my dreams are just punishments because I'll never attain them. Like those were the thoughts that I had, which is why I believe so deeply in coaching, because it's just not who I am today. I have such deep evidence that this work changed me right? That I don't believe that today. It doesn't serve me. Those beliefs don't serve you. That we're born to struggle, that belief does not serve you, right? I believe now that the universe, God wants me well resourced, wants me to know that I'm capable, wants me to live in my purpose, wants me to be well resourced financially with love and joy so that I can go out and be of service and give love, give joy, use my money for beautiful, amazing things. And anything other than that, those thoughts don't serve me, right? And that means I have the capacity to build whatever's in my heart. I have the capacity to build that. So the last thing is, in order to, there's so many different ways to actually go out and build your capacity. Now, and if you wanted to do this work, like that's something that we would do one-on-one. But I want to just kind of give you a generalized idea, okay? A few things. Emotional capacity is feeling your hard feelings, pausing, letting them wash over you, right? The discomfort, wanting to detach and numb. If you're trying to numb, it's because you believe you don't have the capacity to handle this hard feeling, right? And I have a note on my desk, if I can find it, that this emotion is not an emergency. This emotion is only part of the story and not the whole story. I'm capable of feeling this for as long as it's here. I have the capacity to be here in this challenge, and I lean in and trust my power, the infinite power, and the universe or the divine, right? So that it's like emotional capacity to hold the hard feelings of the challenges, okay? Physical capacity is really understanding and knowing your body and when you physically need a nap versus you're tired from your thoughts. Okay, our thoughts are going to make us drain our energy. Or is it physically tired? And knowing the difference and how much physical capacity do you want to hold? Intellectual capacity is believing I can figure this out and I can be in this and it takes as long as it needs to for me to figure this out. And I'm also capable of figuring it out quickly. That's some of the ways to believe we have infinite intellectual capacity, right? Things that really confuse you. And deciding that you are capable of figuring it out. Operational capacity. Okay, and for me, that's operating in a schedule. Being efficient with my time. Operational capacity could mean really so many different things. But what does it look like for you to expand your capacity? And if you believed you have infinite capacity, what would you be doing that you're not doing? How would you be talking to yourself that maybe you're not talking to yourself now? And do you want to believe that you're stuck and you're just meant to stay stuck? And how is that serving you? It's serving you by you don't have to do the work. You don't have to show up. You don't have to try to figure it out. You can just decide I'm supposed to be stuck. And it's like, it's letting ourselves off the hook. There might be other ways it's keeping you, it's protecting you or, serving you. But that's something that I know off the top of my head as a coach and what it did for me, right? By telling people I didn't have or by believing I didn't have the capacity or I wasn't capable, I didn't have to try. Or I didn't have to look at why I was working for other people and not for me. Right? And I just don't do that today. I've built my capacity to fail. Right? We have to have a capacity to fail. And I'm going to leave you with this. One of the biggest things, if not the biggest thing I had to build, is the capacity for joy, the capacity for ease, the capacity for good things, and the capacity to receive. That has been the hardest. Because when I received as a kid, bad things happened on the other side. It was threatened to be taken from me. And so my nervous system did not believe it was safe to receive. Or I built a life of struggle. And my nervous system decided, I don't know when, but my nervous system decided that if I stopped struggling, the fire in me would go out and I would get bored and there would be nothing to live for. And when I saw that voice, when I saw that belief, I panicked. Because I was like, that's not a good thought. And I discovered that thought last year. I would continue patterns of thriving and then struggle, thriving and struggle. And I realized it was happening and I didn't know why. Well, my whole life I've been trying to solve certain things. And I created this belief that if I solve for them, what would be my purpose? I've had to prove to myself, I've had to build my capacity for ease. And that meant raising my hand and asking for it to be easier than it is. Asking for help, taking people up on help. Or instead of making it hard on myself, raising my hand and say, you know what, I need a few days for this. Instead of rushing, struggling to get it done, I'd raise my hand and say, you know what, I need an extra week. Before I would never have done that. Or, whatever. I never raised my hand and spoke up. Whatever was said to me, that's how I made it work that way. And sometimes that created deep struggle. Instead of how can I make this easier? That note is on my desk. How can this be easier? Right? We are allowed to live in ease. We are allowed to have all the things we want. We're allowed to be happy and joyful, whether we produce or not. We're allowed to rest at any time without producing. Life does not have to be a struggle. We create that with a belief. Even in the hard times, we can absolutely create our struggle, or create more of a struggle, especially if we're staying stuck. And so I have notes on my desk about how can this be easier. I've created safety for my nervous system. I've done meditations. I've done EFT tapping to envision an easier life, and my nervous system easing into not restricting. My nervous system would lock up if I thought about solving for my eating disorder, solving for just not having to struggle. And my nervous system didn't know what to do with that information. I've eased her into, oh, that's actually possible, and that's actually my God-given right. Right? I say, God wants me resourced. God wants me in overflow. So how am I looking at this situation and creating struggle versus how the divine, the universe, God, however you want to say it, would have me look at it? How do I look at it through that lens? So that is my synopsis, and it's like a little bit of an introduction too, of capacity, of infinite capacity, and a little bit of capacity work. I think it is the most important work we can do as a human being. Other than healing any trauma, this is it. Building our capacity, especially if we're high achievers. Think about it. If you feel it's unsafe, if deep down your nervous system feels it's unsafe to receive, or it's unsafe to be seen, we have to build our capacity to be seen, right? Especially if we're selling on social media, right? If we don't think it's safe to be seen, we're not going to show up. We're going to stay stuck. We have to build our capacity to fail, maybe in front of people, build our capacity to be vulnerable, build our capacity to take risk. So many different ways. So which capacities do you wish you could change? Maybe that you have a capacity here and you want a capacity there. What does that look like for you? Come up with ways to build that capacity, but then you have to manage your mind. Because if you're fighting against yourself that you don't think deep down you have the energy, you're going to go into burnout. Or you're going to be spinning your wheels in the hamster wheel. You're going to be going, and staying in the same place, and you're going to burn out. You have to manage your mind during this work. Love, compassion, curiosity. And that's it. That's it for this week. I am sending you all so much love. I have a very deep belief in all of you that you can be anything you want to. I want to be an example of what is possible. And I'm hoping I've given you lots of evidence in all these podcast episodes of how you can do the same. And I'll see you next week. Bye, guys. One more thing. If you're loving this content, I would love for you to review wherever you're listening. Share this with a fellow amazing human that might need some extra support. And I'd love your feedback. If you're looking to give it, you can reach me at coaching@AllisonGallagher.com. If you're curious on how I can help you and what it would look like to work together, if you want to accelerate your goals, if you have goals, just don't know where to start, or if you just know you're meant for more, we would start with a free scheduled call. You would tell me where you are and where you wish you were. And by the end of that call, you're going to have relief and clarity, even some confidence, because you're going to know your action steps to take next. Then you can decide if working with me is the right fit or not. Either way, you're going to have all the information you need to move forward. To schedule a call, you can follow the link in my show notes or go to AllisonGallagher.com for more information. You've been listening to the You Get to Decide podcast with your host, Allison Cratchola Gallagher. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.